Hello, hello, good night. And it's 3 minutes to 8 p.m. Eastern Time here in Colombia. Hello, Anna.
Hello, Nia. How are you?
I'm very good and very excited because this is particularly a topic that I enjoy a lot, and it's purpose and work because most of us can very intimately and personally relate to the action of working nowadays.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm really glad that we're talking about this because also work is an important channel to express our purpose.
It can be, certainly it can be, and we will learn about these five sages, these five speakers of the Purpose Sages Summit that we were making their content available today on our platform for free for people to start relating to the topic of purpose and work. And we will be taking in the questions that come from any of the social media where we are broadcasting to today. And yeah, before we dive into any of the topics, just as we did yesterday, how do you arrive to this live session today, Anna?
Well, I'm good. I'm excited, and at the same time, I notice that there's a little concern because the electricity has been unstable here where I'm from, and so we might be affected by that, which is very interesting. This is such an important topic, and conditions might be challenging, and at the same time, right here, right now, we're connected. So let's make the most of that. But yes, I wanted to be upfront about that possibility that we
Yes,
might
and
have to go earlier.
yes, and kind of a little bit out of topic, but into what you're saying about the conditions right now. Do you think it has something to do with the recent weather conditions here in the country? Because it's been quite hot in some areas.
Yeah, it is incredibly hot, and this we are in VUCA times,
Mm.
volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous times. So
Mhm.
it's hard to pinpoint the cause, but at the same time, I'm okay with just flowing with the circumstances and welcoming people who are joining. Hello, Luis, from Florida. I know you're normally in Boston, but today you're in Florida. Hello, whoever goes with experience LOS 7713. Hello, hello. Thank you for your comments. Every comment is super welcome and gives us energy. So great to have you here.
Exactly. So let's start with the intention that we can follow through with this live, that we can continue to discuss about purpose and work, which has been the topic today. The contents have been available for 11 hours right now since 9 a.m. Eastern time for free. So if by any chance you are joining us today and you are just learning about the Purpose Ages Summit, you can still register for free, access the talks about purpose and work, and during the rest of the week until Saturday, access talks about other topics and purpose as well. So, yeah, a little kind of commercial comment there before asking you to let us tune in to the topic of today and fully open our awareness, fully open our active listening for this conversation.
Great. Thank you, Nia. So I'd like to center ourselves with taking 3 deep breaths. Connecting with our breath, connecting with our body in this moment, giving ourselves the gift of presence, of a moment of rest, a moment of connection. And from here, I invite us into a short visualization. Let's imagine ourselves in a work environment where our values, what's important to us, are in complete alignment with our professional tasks. Let's envision how this alignment and this harmony makes us feel. Perhaps it makes us feel more energized, motivated, and fulfilled. And now let's reflect on the impact and imagine the impact that our work is having in our lives, in our colleagues, in the work itself, and in the world around us. The positive impact that we're creating. And let's take that in. Breathe with this possibility that we're imagining for more and more people on the planet to experience this. And whenever we're ready, let's come back into the here and now.
Great.
Over to
Thanks, Anna.
you.
Thanks a lot. And thank you for also sending these paragraphs on the emails that we are distributing to the attendees of the Purpose Ages Summit so that they can tune into this energy from very early in the morning. So, if I may start with today's sages, I want to say that today we have such a diversity. We have people from Venezuela, from Spain, from the United Kingdom, from Chile, and from Argentina. So we have 5 different nationalities today and many different approaches to work, both individual and organizational. So, Anna, how would you like to introduce this topic? What are the main, points that are addressed by these 5 sages today?
Well, before I even get into the sages, it's acknowledging that work is not only what we do for pay. We have so many ways of contributing to life and so many contexts where we provide our service. So when we talk about work, it's not only that paid endeavor, it's whatever we contribute to others. That's how we are defining work. And that's a very important part of our lives. Even if we're retired, we're still contributing in some way.
Exactly.
Right?
It seems like it's natural calling, it's a natural thing. It's a very human and universal human thing to do, to put your body to action, put your mind into action. And that would be the basis of working, as I understand it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's like a first look into this topic that is an innocent and pure perspective on work. Now, if we now start to look at work and in the majority of organizations and how statistics shows where work is at, Bea, one of the sages, she has this very bold statement. She says, work is broken.
Mm.
And so I want to put this on the table.
Yes, and I can see that we have Dina, who was one of the Purpose Sages, invited tomorrow here online, checking in from Atlanta. We also have Experience. Where can I access the content for today's session? He's asking. So we can take this as an opportunity to invite him to join us at the Purpose Sages Summit. He can go to bit.ly/purpose-sages-summit, and we will for sure share these links there on YouTube later today so that you can register and access the content for free of the sessions of today and the rest of the week. And if you wish to, you can upgrade to the paid version, which during this week is $69. And It will give you unlimited access to all the talks and also some extra resources to dive into what purpose means for you. So
Mhm.
yeah, so saying hello to the audience connecting live right now. And I want to mention about Bea Bocalandro and her talk, which is called Job Repurposing, the talk that she delivered there today, job repurposing, that she also wrote a book called Do Good Work, where she's speaking about social purpose, success, and well being. So I think these are topics that also come across many of the talks, well being, and in the corporate world and in the organizational environment, we talk about work life balance. And I think that's one of the topics about work that it's more talked about. And here we are not talking about work and life being two separate things and trying to find the balance between those two. Here we're talking about putting all your being into that activity which we call work. And that is something that Bea also touches upon when she talks about well-being and social purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So, connecting with that bold statement that broke work, or a good majority of work, the experience of working in organizations
Mm-hmm.
is not wholesome for most people. So her proposal, her offering is to shift the job description. Don't accept the job description in that many times is stripped of meaning and significance for people, and that contributes to a mechanical and disconnected relationship with work. So what she says is, if we repurpose that job description and find some kind of social contribution that you're making with your your work, that kind of purpose, that kind of social purpose, she says, is a portal to deeper purpose. And Bea, as a member of Global Purpose Leaders, which I like to mention and acknowledge because they have been really important in my understanding of purpose. Dina is part of GPL, Luis also, and many of the sages, our speakers, are part of that organization. And she knows that there are stages of purpose. So we have a first stage when people have no purpose, a second stage of declared purpose, very rationally, we just put the purpose statement, and we do our best to live into it. And then another stage, it has to do with soul purpose. It's a deeper level of purpose. And then deeper still is unitive purpose, which is where we give our lives over to the divine and to universal spiritual values like unity and love, and are guided by something greater. So Bea says that it all starts with how we see our work as a contribution uh, to something greater, to society, to others. A pro-social way of thinking about work. I'm looking at Luis, who's here, listening, viewing, and he talks a lot about pro-social behavior. And this is not obvious. Many of us were brought up in very individualistic, competitive contexts. And so shifting the mindset into a more generous and um, appreciative way of relating to others.
Great. Thank you, Anna, for this great summary. I think we could totally dive in to any of these talks very deeply. And if people want to do so, please go ahead and watch them. These are usually between 40 minutes to 1 hour, each one of them. So the sages dive much deeper into their own research and their own statements. And
Mm.
you have mentioned meaning, which brings me to our second talk of today, which was made by Antonio Linares and yourself in a great conversation from home to home. And he talks about building shared meaning. And he
Mhm.
goes a lot more into the organizations than into the individual level. There's also components of the individual level of purpose, but he also, and this is something that I found really insightful. He talks about purpose within the organizations, and he makes distinctions, for example, in organizations that are family owned, and the kind of tension that there can be between the vision of the CEO or the owner of the company and the way that he or she understands power, and the way that power is distributed within the layers of the organization. So, what would you highlight from Antonio's talk?
Yeah, that when you become a leader in an organization, um, you have to understand that the vision you have crafted for the organization now becomes the an intangible asset of the organization. And so you need to separate yourself and now realize that this vision is not just about you. It's now something that is part of the culture, of the identity of the organization. And so that understanding was very enlightening to me. And that oftentimes organizations don't have a true vision. They have maybe a
Mm.
transactional vision of like, by this year or this year we're going to sell so much and be positioned in this way, but they don't have a true vision that's a pro-social vision of how they're going to contribute to the world. And that's essential for organizations in this day and age to have.
And I want to highlight something about this particular conversation with Antonio that is not about the conversation itself and the topic, but it's about the way that it happens between you and him. And this is also that happens with many of the sages, that these talks are such a great exercise of active listening. And I can see and I can feel how you're really holding space for these sages to just let their wisdom come through with really no interruptions, with just total flow and naturality. So I really learned a lot from his talk, from Antonio Linares from Spain, because yeah, precisely, you were holding so much space for him to just put his wisdom out. So totally recommendable. And then third on the agenda of today, we had Sarah James Wright from the United Kingdom, and her session was called Sensing the Purpose in the System. What can you tell us about her talk?
Yeah, well, I love her perspective because she's a constellator. If people don't know about constellation work, family constellations, in this case, organizational constellations, it's fascinating as a modality to work and understand the system. So she comes in and creates these incredible setup of elements of the system and how they relate to each other. And so what she says about purpose is that it comes as a unifier. Purpose has a role in every system to unify the system, whatever it is. If it's a
Mm.
family, if it's a mm, organization, a society, and sometimes it can be a stated purpose, or sometimes it could be as simple as, in a family, it could be passing life on. That's the purpose of a family, an unstated purpose, but there's always some kind of purpose. It can be declared or not. So it's the unifier. And I really love this very simple definition of purpose, because even for our own individual selves, purpose is the unifier of our being, right? If we do have some way of unifying, because we, as many of our sages say, we live fragmented lives. We have all these people inside of us, one wanting one thing, the other one the
Mhm.
other, sabotage ourselves, whereas purpose helps us unify and have coherence. And we spoke about this yesterday. So Sarah speaks about that. Sarah also speaks about a shadow side of purpose. It's quite fascinating. She says that organizations, and particularly purpose driven organizations, can be so obsessed with their purpose that they can create harm
Mm.
by promoting a culture of overwork.
Mm.
So that we really need to find a good balance between being purpose driven and passionate about our purpose, at the same time as caring for our well-being, reflection, and rest.
Yeah, very important in this corporate and organizational world to remember that in a state of rest is where we can get more creative. It's where we can truly connect to the meaning and to the purpose of what we do. And one of the reasons why I love so much the topic of purpose and work is because I feel that work is the door towards exploring purpose for many, many people.
Yeah,
Many people, yes.
yeah,
And
yeah. That,
yeah, and yesterday we were talking about how we are also helping to create language and bringing language to the forefront of the discussion for people to feel and hear what resonates with them in this path of purpose discovery. And today you're bringing in the concept of constellation in no astronomical way possible right now, much in a metaphorical way. And Sarah talks about it, and some of the say another one of the sages of today, Maite Moreno from Argentina, she also talks about purpose as a constellation, or in a metaphorical way as a constellation too. So really nice to see how we are bringing more and more of these poetic and metaphoric approaches to the conversation. So thanks, Anna, for that summary about Sarah James Wright. Is there
Mhm.
something else you would like to add about her, or should we move on to our next stage of today?
Yeah, I would like to highlight Luis's comment here. He says that Andrew Soren has done research on the subject of the dark side of meaning and
Mm,
purpose, where employees can overdo and management takes advantage, thus defeating the spirit of intent. Yeah, this is completely in alignment with what we're saying. And just the other day, I was having a conversation with a colleague and talking about how of many of us have insecurities, and so these insecurities have people go on overdrive and do more and do everything you can to prove yourself, and then
mm,
so and then you realize at one point in your life that you've given everything to that purpose of the organization, so that you can be noticed, so that you can be appreciated, so that you can be seen, promoted, etc. And so I hope that this is related to what you're saying, Luis. That's how I'm interpreting, and how the system takes advantage of that. And that's beautifully also talked about, or explored in the movie Soul. If you haven't watched it, I think it's a good it's a good play
brilliant.
of these two polarities of what in the movie they call purpose and the spark. Not losing the spark of life, not losing the just being happy to be alive, even if you're not doing anything for any purpose specifically. And the other thing I would say about Sarah is the nested levels of purpose. I think that's a fascinating concept, where you have your individual purpose, but then in your maybe relationship, you have a family purpose, and then you have the organizational purpose, and then you have your community purpose. You can have these nested levels of purpose, and each one informs your identity, informs your orientation, what you're about. And so there's a complexity there in navigating all of that, but there's also a beauty and hopefully an alignment of all of these nested levels of purpose.
Great. Thank you, Anna. And thank you, Luis, for adding on to the conversation. That's the idea, that we can use all of the channels, greeting, spoken, to continue deepening into this conversation about purpose, and today about purpose and work. And the next speaker and sage that we had today on the agenda is called Ignacio Paves. He's from Chile, and the title of his session is Activating Purpose in Organizations. So it is connected already to some of the other highlights that we have mentioned from the other sessions.
Mhm.
Organizations come a lot into the conversation when talking about work, of course. And
Mm.
I was very impressed actually by his academic career. He's got a very strong academic career, and he's been really dedicating lots of his life to researching this topic of purpose. What can you highlight from his talks?
Yeah, me too. I really admire him in his scholarship. What I he's one of the experts in appreciative inquiry,
Mm,
and that's another modality of work and organizational development. And it's very simple because it's bringing an appreciative lens to anything we do, and by asking questions that bring out the strengths and in an appreciative way. So, for example, a question can be, um, "Tell me about a time where you felt fulfilled at work," or "Tell me about a time you felt, great energy working with a team."
mm,
And so, with these stories, then you identify the strengths of the person, the strengths of the organization, and you start from there. And he says that that's the best way, the best mindset to approach an individual or an organization's potential, because really purpose is very connected with our potential, right? With our strengths, with what we have to contribute. And so we activate that potential according to this method with with an appreciative lens, right? And that
mm,
makes so much sense. So the opposite of that is coming in with a problem solving lens. So, oh, this organization, has so many problems we have to solve, and this is the list of the issues. Like, energetically already we just feel the difference, right?
mhm,
It's not so exciting to start with the problem to be solved, whereas, like, oh, all the strengths that we have and all this potential we have, and starting from there does something to us, and because we've been so trained in the rational mind, we've neglected all of these emotional um, aspects, really important aspects of our humanity. So the way we even approach a system can be very different from these two mindsets, the appreciative lens or the problem solving lens. So that's fascinating. And another thing that he says is, in his research, he has studied a lot what it means to be an organization that has a net positive impact, and to have that net positive impact, leaders have to have a certain kind of mindset. And that mindset, according to his research, in its core, it's a mindset of interconnectedness. Simple, that's the one variable that differentiates these kinds of leaders that create those kinds of companies or organizations. And that's it's a minority. And he speaks about the big divide of all these intentions of companies, organizations that say, oh, we want to do good in the world, but what actually happens, it's a big disconnect. And he calls that the big divide.
mm.
And why that big divide exists is because what I just mentioned, he calls it an ontological gap, which means like an issue with the leader's way of being. And this variable of interconnectedness is what he finds needs to be nurtured in the leaders of today. And he talks about a variety of practices that leaders can do to cultivate this sense of interconnectedness.
Yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it was him who said that sometimes the organization becomes the problem. Like when it's so solution oriented and it's always trying to address the problems, it's creating the problems for themselves to such a degree that the organization itself becomes the problem. And instead of bringing out the strengths of the team by, as you were explaining, asking them what is the best team experience that you've had, and actually bringing out the strengths of the system, then the system itself becomes the problem. Very interesting how he puts it.
Yeah, it's the culture. The culture is immersed in this mindset of problem solving to the point that it's not awakening its potential.
And you have also introduced the topic of leadership, and I can see how many things are intertwined here with work. And it's, of course, the connection of the individual to their own purpose, and the way that the organization is organized and built, and of course the mindset of the leaders. So yeah, we're going to have a whole set of talks on leadership, which probably also connects to work when we dive into them.
I'm glad you said that, because everything that I've said so far applies even if you're not the leader of the organization. You're just a member of a team in a big organization or in a small organization. Everything we've said applies. You can bring whatever your role is, an appreciative lens that helps your teammates connect with their strengths and their potential. You can embody a sense of interconnectedness, and that in itself will shift the dynamics. People will sense that from you, will be inspired by that. That will create another level of collaboration, and you can come in there with a sense of purpose of what you're up to there as a team, and um, inviting others to connect to the purpose of the organization, of the team, and that in itself is a huge contribution to the atmosphere and to the well-being, the motivation of others.
Absolutely. I can agree on that. I remember a colleague of mine who once told me, you just lead from your seat. Whichever your seat is, if you have the capacity to lead, you just sit from it. You just lead from it, lead from your seat. So that
Yeah.
reminds me of that. And I'm here checking the agenda of the rest of the week, just to send out an invitation for people who are interested in purpose and leadership. That will be on January 26th, which is a Friday.
Yes.
This Friday. This Friday, it's Purpose and Leadership. And last, but certainly not least, we have Maite Moreno from Argentina. And this is also such a calming talk. I had this calm sensation. It was so harmonious. It probably has to
Mm.
do with the fact that she's so connected to poetry and she expresses herself in such a poetic way. What can you
Mm-hmm.
highlight from her talk, which is titled Purpose and the Poetic Career?
Yes. Well, I want to highlight that I met Maite in this important conference on um, well-being and for change makers. So Maite is quite the activist, a change maker herself. She's very committed to social change. And when you meet her, you might not see that initially because she's also a poet. And so I love that, she's role modeling the multidimensionality that we can have. And she probably learned how important it is for people who have this strong sense of purpose of making the world a better place, improving society, how important it is to feed your soul. And we talked quite a bit of about soul in this session. And she had this incredible phrase that stuck with me. She said, "We are starved for poetry. We have a poetry starvation."
Mm,
And how I interpret that is that we've become so rational and so much about making an impact in the world and measuring that we've many of us lose touch with that sense of meaning and beauty and just what stirs our soul, what gives us a sense of poetry in our lives, of magic. And I think she does a beautiful job in harmonizing that, because she has great, a career focused on generating impact, but also on helping people think about their career in a more poetic way and in the different parts of themselves. Not unlike what we do in Revision Academy. So there's a lot of commonality, and we both are inspired by nature, metaphors from nature, and the rhythms of nature, right? So how do we um, attune to the organic pace of life instead of this like go go go? She talks a lot about feminine and masculine. Where are we at in this continuum of energies? We need both. We need both. And our society has been heavily oriented towards the masculine. And how are we opening space for the feminine? Also for men, and there's more and more men now openly talking about the feminine in them and these archetypal energies that are part of us and that makes us more whole. more and more people leaning to their vulnerability, to their creativity, their expressiveness, their heart, their soul. So all of this also touches upon the spiritual, which we'll talk about on Saturday, but she connects it a lot with work because that she's a career mentor. Yeah, so
Yes, I
that's where I
remember she's helping people with their own career path.
hmm
Such an interesting
exactly.
also combination of poetry and consultancy. This really gives me lots of hope that there are many of us breaching these two aspects of life and these many aspects of life, and bringing harmony also into the work environment and into the work realm of people's life. And I'm very happy that you brought up the conversation about balancing out the masculine and feminine energies, which people can interpret in many different ways, yin and yang, just the
Mhm.
opposites playing, and the cycles and the circles of the opposites that are playing out in every single dynamic of the human experience. And how in the corporate world and also in the organizational world, I refer both to corporate and organizational because there are so many organizations that are non for profit and also continue to have similar work dynamics as the corporate. And in both, I see how we are really shifting from words like determination, motivation, competition that are very outwards and very extrinsically motivated as well, to other words such as enthusiasm and inspiration and passion to be there. And in a way, this also is a reflection of this balancing of energies that is coming into the work of people at every level. So
Mm.
yeah, so great how all of these conversations are also leading us to other topics, the topic of spirituality at the end of the week, which I'm very much looking forward to because it's also a very fascinating one in this
Yeah.
in this summit.
hmm
Yeah, Anna, so with that we have made the summary of all the 5 talks that people can still access for free today and for some 12 hours more. If some people here are night owls like myself, they can enjoy 1 or 2 talks later after this live. And I just want to ask you, Anna, how has been your own experience with work in your path of purpose discovery and connecting with purpose?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, what's what come? That's a huge question.
Mhm.
Um, I want to start by acknowledging my mother here, who is probably listening or will view later. She's a big supporter of all my endeavors. Um, Not that my father isn't and my stepmother, but I'm just thinking of her because she was a big role model of the importance of work in one's life and purposeful work. And this is to highlight the role of parents and how important it is to have this role model in our lives that shows that work can be something that we're enthusiastic about, that we're passionate about, that um, we are also creating, because that's what I saw in my life. She was also creating her work with her own um, drive and ideas. And so yeah, I want to bring up this sense that we're primed from an early age to think about work in a certain way, and that whoever's listening here, viewing as parents, you do prime your kids in a certain way. Not that they can't go out of it in some way, but in my case, the priming was very positive. And I learned from an early age that work was a place to get empowered, to find empowerment. Unfortunately, when I started my work career, I didn't find that same empowerment in the environment. So quickly, I said, "Ooh, I want to be independent. I want to be my own boss."
Yes.
And this speaks a little bit to what Bea says. A lot of work is broken, and
Mhm.
many of cultures in the organizations are very toxic. And so that was my experience. And I've only been an employee per se for a year and a half of my life. The rest I've been
Mhm.
completely independent. So that says a lot about my experience of work in traditional conventional organizations. And I created my own path. So what I can say is that work for me has been a consistent source of joy, with the exception of a big breakdown that I had, in which I narrate in my book, and that was when I lost my sense of purpose.
Mm.
And so when I lost my sense of purpose in life, of course, I attracted work that, contributing to my breakdown, to my feeling lost, and then going through a series of steps to regain my sense of purpose, to understand who I am in all my dimensions, not just work, was a big catalyst to then crafting a new life and then attracting the work that, was mine to do, was truly mine to do. But it was a very important breakdown to have. So if you are here and you are facing some kind of big breakdown at work, big transition, you can't take this anymore, you need to leave, I can totally understand. And this can be a big uh, catalyst for your growth and for finding your purpose, as Stefania mentioned earlier.
Anna, thank you. And before we wrap up this conversation for today and invite people to join us tomorrow for another topic, I would like to add that for me, it's also quite hopeful and relieving to see that many people around the world are aware that, yes, organizations and corporations and generally these communities that exist around work are solid structures of our society. We are shifting eras, things change quickly, but work isn't going anywhere. Work is shifting, the ways that we work are shifting, the way that we understand work is shifting. It doesn't mean that it's just going to leave as a whole aspect of our lives. So for me, it's great to see that so many people are focusing on purpose at an individual level, from a work perspective, and an organizational level as well, because then organizations have the power to drive societal and economical change, and they are a lot more powerful than individuals working by themselves all alone, right? So just from my end, wanted to wrap up this conversation by encouraging people who are watching us to open up to thinking about how they can be more purposeful at work and how their organizations can be more purposeful as well.
Yes, for sure. I want to also end on a very positive note of, even if an organization has its difficulties, in terms of culture, there's many coaches out there, many organizational development consultants, and I see Jill who signed on. It's great to see you here,
Mm.
Jill. She and many people here are doing our best to contribute to shifting the cultures of organizations in favor of more healthy cultures, healthy ways of working. And that's why we're here as well. Hopefully this summit is a contribution, towards that end.
It certainly is, Anna. So thanks a lot for this conversation today, and thanks to everyone watching us live. Thanks to all the audience. I can also see all the comments here. Thank you for the support. And tomorrow, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be talking about purpose and trauma, which is also such a core topic of this summit.
Yes, make sure to tune in. Even if you don't have a relationship with that word, I invite you to open your mind, open your heart, to listen in and see what insights might you take from this important exploration.
Wonderful, Anna. And I'm very happy that everything worked out. The light collaborated, the internet connection collaborated all the way until the end. So have a
Yeah.
wonderful evening, Anna. enjoy your time. And again, thanks for putting together all this content and make it available for so many people around the world.
My pleasure. Thank you, Estefania. It's always a pleasure to work with you. And thank you to all our viewers and listeners, both who are here right now and who will watch this later. Thank you. Thank you, universe, that we were able to do this to the end with electricity.
Great. Good luck and good evening, and see you tomorrow, Anna. Ciao, ciao.
Everyone. Ciao.